we had the beef, we had the chicken, we added some eggs, and then we did the firewood.
Yeah.
And so, that was kind of the income deal. What made it work was we lived so cheaply.
Yeah.
If we had wanted a vacation and had been paying a mortgage on a big house and, done all and been, Teresa and I were married. We got married in 1980. And I remember well in 2020. So we'd been married 20 years and we added up. And in the 20 years, we had not spent a cumulative total of $10,000 on automobiles.
From the Florida Parent Educators Association, home of the largest homeschool convention in America, this is the Not by the Book podcast. I'm your host, FPEA Chairman Suzanne Nunn, and together we will hear from guests who share their journey to who and where they are today. Each one of them at some point left the expected path, ripped the page out of the book that says, you have to do it like this, and made their own way. I hope these conversations inspire you as much as they do me. Today I'm talking with Joel Salatin, the Lunatic farmer. His bio reads, others who like him call him the most famous farmer in the world, the high priest of the pasture, and the most eclectic thinker from Virginia since Thomas Jefferson. Well, I like him, so I concur. But today we get to the story of how Joel became this farmer that we all know and love. We hear his amazing story and talk about the freedom that comes from living a life that embraces different.
So our story kind of starts, I like to go back a generation because it's so had such a profound impact on our family. My dad was in the Navy in World War II and then got out and he had a dream. He wanted to farm. Mm-hmm. And, here you are, you're a Midwestern kid. You don't have any land, don't have any money. How do you start farming?
Right.
And so he was always ready to be on the outside of the envelope, always outside the box. And so he said, he thought, well, I'll go to a developing country. The land is cheaper. He already saw socialist creep in the U.S. Post World War II. And so he went to Indiana University on the GI Bill and got his degree in business. And then went to Vermont for a semester at Middlebury in Spanish, and then hitchhiked. Get this, he hitchhiked from Vermont to Mexico.
What?
And spent 6 months with a Mexican family, and then came back and sat for the Foreign Civil Service exam in Spanish, passed it his first go, got on with Texas Oil Company as a bilingual accountant to the Wildcat Ventures off the coast of Venezuela, and married mom, and within 7 years was able to save enough money to buy a 1,000-acre farm in the highlands of Venezuela.
Wow.
And okay, so then he had my older brother, and then they had me, and we're on the farm, and he saw the most pressing opportunity as being poultry and dairy. So we began raising chickens, and almost immediately took over the local chicken market. Back then there's no refrigeration and all the and little hygiene. Mm-hmm. And so all the indigenous chickens had kind of a post-nasal drip. We would call it snot, but it kind of had this respiratory, this raspy respiratory, because it had open sewers and it was just filthy and all that.
Right.
Well, our chickens were clean. And so very quickly, Dad captured the entire, local chicken market, and all the other producers accused us of voodoo and witchcraft because that's the only way you could have chickens that clean. Mm-hmm. And a lot of animosity developed there. And so then in 1959, when there was a junta, a coup d'etat,
right,
of Pérez Jiménez, when there's lawlessness, it allows for scores to be settled that wouldn't normally be settled,
right,
and so it gave opportunity to settle those scores, and so we basically had to flee the back door as the machine guns came in the front door. Wow. And Dad was 39, lost everything. We stayed for most of a year while he tried to get protection, but there was no protection. Nobody was interested at all. And so the only thing to do was to leave. And so left everything, came back to the U.S. We landed in Philadelphia on Easter Sunday, 1961, and Dad wanted to go back. His heart was there. He loved the people, loved the culture. I mean, how can you not love where you can grow, bananas, papayas, and pineapples in the
Everything.
yard?
Yeah.
And so we wanted to go back. So that's why he and Mom didn't go back to the Midwest where they were both from, but settled here in Virginia so we could be within a few hours of the Venezuelan embassy. If things settled, we could be there shortly, get paper signed, and literally in days be, back in Venezuela. Well, that never happened, but that's how we ended up here in Virginia. So we looked at farms from an arc from about Raleigh, North Carolina, through the Shenandoah Valley up into Lancaster, Pennsylvania, in an arc around D.C., and settled here on the cheapest, most worn-out, gullied rock pile that was available, and settled here in 1961.
Can I ask, how old were you when you all had to flee from Venezuela?
I was 4. Yeah, I was 4. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I spoke Spanish fluently. I don't have the vocabulary anymore. So when we came back to the States, Mom and Dad, this is 1961, Cold War, McCarthyism.
Oh, yeah.
And we're in this very conservative area of Virginia over here in the Shenandoah Valley in Swope on a dirt road. And so, and a lot of people didn't know what Spanish was back then. And we kids didn't know when to speak it and when not. So you get these weird looks in the grocery store. And my older brother, who was 3 years older, he was 7. So in school, he gets bullied and laughed at for, upside down exclamation marks in his, writing and different things. And so Mom and Dad made the decision to stop speaking Spanish in the home just to take the pressure off of us kids as we went around.
Right.
And I totally get why they did it, but man, do I wish they had been speaking. So I'd be totally bilingual today.
Right.
But I have excellent diction. I just don't have any comprehension.
Yeah.
So that's, so we came here. So now Dad's saying, well, so how do I farm? And so we got expert advice from government people, private people. And I got to go back one more generation. My grandfather, his dad, was a charter subscriber to Rodale's Organic Gardening and Farming magazine.
Right.
1945 when it came out. He always had a compost pile and some chickens and a big garden and all that. And so Dad really got that non-chemical approach from him. And he saw the chemical approach as kind of a drug addiction. You have to keep getting more and more to get the same kick all the time. And so when you got all this expert advice, it was all, buy chemicals, plant corn, build silos, borrow more money, And Dad knew that wasn't the right approach. And so he went off the farm to work. My mom was a school teacher. She went off the farm to work, and the 2 salaries paid the mortgage in about 12 years. By this time now, I'm a teenager. I'm 16, and I want to farm full time. By this time, Dad had done a lot of experiments, different things. And so we knew we were confident there were some things that would work. But they were just been experimental. We had 12 cows. We had, we milked a cow. We raised a couple pigs. It was basically a glorified homestead.
Yeah.
That never really made any money on the farm, but we had all these wonderful experiments and prototypes behind. And so when Teresa and I got married in 1980, so now I'm, how do I make a living? I wanted to farm, how do I make a living on the farm? And so we got married in 1980, and now I'm working off the farm. Teresa's working off the farm.
I'm sorry. Can I stop for a second and go back? You were 16 and you already knew that you wanted to farm.
Oh, I knew that when I was 12.
Okay.
I wanted nothing more than to farm. I had my first chickens. I got my first chickens when I was 10. I got 50 as hatched from Sears and Roebuck, the big Sears and Roebuck catalogs.
Absolutely.
And I got those chicks in, and I had an egg business throughout from 10 on through high school. I had an egg business. I got up eventually to about 300 hens.
Wow.
And I was supplying 2 schools, 2 restaurants, everybody at church, people around. I'd get on my bicycle and ride around and deliver. And so that was where I got spending money, and it was my business.
Yeah. So, and you said, I love this because you said a couple of things about your dad. First, that he wasn't afraid to be out of the box. And then you have talked about how some of the things that he did were experimental. And can you share a little bit more about like what that meant to you in your teen years? I mean, obviously it would be inspiring to see somebody.
Yeah, so yeah, here we are, around the holiday period, Thanksgiving and all that.
Mm,
People always ask, well, what do if you could say one thing you were thankful about, and I've come to, at this stage of my life, I've come to the realization that I'm most thankful that I grew up in a home that embraced different.
mm-hmm. I love
And
that. Yeah.
in other words, we weren't pushed into different. We didn't go reluctantly into different. We actually embraced different. And
Right.
so I'll give you, of course, going to Venezuela, that was certainly different.
Right.
And so I'll give you a couple of little stories. So my mom grew up in a hard, dad was an alcoholic. He abandoned her and her mom when she was very, very small during the Depression.
Yeah.
They ended up having to move to Fort Worth to live in a duplex with relatives just to survive.
Mm,
Hard. And so mom grew up hating alcohol.
right.
She hated alcohol because of all that. So when she met the Lord at 16 at a Grace Brethren revival with a boyfriend who did not become my dad, but anyway, that's okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, she got it. I mean, she really got it. And,
Right.
and so when she went to college, here she is, in college, and attractive, bright, outgoing, co-ed. Well, all the girls, the women's sororities wanted to recruit her for their sororities. And the more she looked into it, the more she realized, well, these are basically just, social drinking outfits.
Right.
Girls they just, and she was far more serious than that and not interested in all the social drinking. So she actually went to the dean of the college and said, listen, I'd like to start a sorority this was at Indiana. I'd like to start a sorority for a non-drinking, a teetotaler sorority, basically, for girls that don't want to drink. And the dean, instead of saying, seems like a good idea, let's see if we can do that, he called her a rebellious, unsatisfied student and put black marks in her resume as a student that she was a troublemaker that could never be satisfied with what the college offered.
Wow.
Yeah. And so anyway, so there's mom. Well, then dad, he takes her to Venezuela, and just a couple of stories about dad. So here we are in the 1960s. Now this is before automobile inspection.
Right.
All right. And so, when you're a farmer, you're supposed to have a pickup truck.
Mm-hmm.
All farmers have pickup trucks. I mean, you got to haul stuff around. Well, dad saw a pickup truck as a very limited use machine. I mean, back then they didn't have these big extended cabs, so he couldn't take the kids in there. He couldn't put us all and there was, and if it rained, if you got feed or something, it rained on the feed because the back end was open.
Right.
And so he went to a neighbor and for $50 bought a 1957 4-door Plymouth sedan, took all the doors off, took all the seats out, and that became our pickup truck. There were no seatbelt laws, so he sat on a bucket.
Oh yeah.
And drove. And now dad was an accountant. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So he wears a suit, a bow tie, and all this. And he drove to clients' places of, to see his tax account in this, doorless, seatless, $50 Plymouth.
That's a great story.
And of course we kids, Suzanne, why do you have kids? You have kids so they can roll their eyes at you,
yes,
right?
Exactly. Good point.
And so that's the way it was here. But as I've gotten older, I realize how that was the perfect vehicle. I mean, you could put chicken feed if it rained. It didn't matter if it rained. All of us kids, we could all sit in. We sat on chicken crates in the back, and that made a big compartment when you took everything out of it.
Right.
It was a big compartment. And so then here you're gonna love this one. So when inspection came along, he was so incensed that the government would intrude on your life this way to dare to inspect your automobile, that he bought a spare set of rims and tires that he kept in an outbuilding out here, And when the annual inspection came along, he jacked the car up, put all the new tires on, go get it inspected, then come home, take all those tires off, put on the bald ones. He said, nobody's going to tell me I can't get my money's worth out of my tire. And so that's the way he circumvented the installation. And then my favorite story is in you're probably not old enough to remember the Arab oil embargo of 1973, 74. Jimmy Carter was president.
Mm-hmm.
We had an Arab oil. You might have been a little girl.
Yes.
And I had an Arab oil. So I was in high school, finishing high school, and it was tough. I mean, you couldn't get gas, but every other day, and it was really confining. Well, so this was kind of a showdown between the Arabs and the U.S.
Right.
And they were trying to increase the price of oil. So Dad, here he is. Dad's at the time, he's 56, 57. He's working at the time as the bookkeeper and financial guy, the bean counter for a relatively large local metal fabrication place.
Mm-hmm.
They had welders and pipe benders and stuff. They fabricated metal stuff for especially stainless steel.
Right.
Conveyors and augers and things like that. So he ran the office there, and it was 17 miles away from our house. It was across on the other side of town.
Mm.
And so the Arab oil embargo hits. He goes and buys a 10. Now remember, he's 56 years old.
Right.
He buys a 10-speed bicycle and begins riding it 17 miles to work and back. And he says, if everybody would just do this, the Arabs can keep their cotton picking oil and leave it in the ground,
Right.
And he was exactly right. He was exactly right. I mean, just imagine if thousands of people had actually done that and dropped our consumption of oil. At that time, we were completely dependent on the Middle East. If we had dropped our consumption of oil by even 20%, they would have come to the table crawling. And I don't have any vendetta against the Arabs or anything, but I mean, that growing up that way just was so, I realize today how that truly helped me not be peer dependent and enjoy being a contrarian.
Well, it definitely inspires you to not be afraid to think about how you want to do something. And if it's different is okay. And, you can definitely grow that way. I think that it is inspiring to me sometimes just to kind of hear where those seeds of, inspiration and willing to step outside of the box. I mean, the podcast is called Not by the Book, and your dad was definitely a person that did not live by the book, so to speak,
Yeah. What we call the orthodox narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And the longer we live, the more we realize, if you're actually thinking person, you realize, wow, that orthodox narrative, more often than not, it's actually wrong. The mob is often wrong. And so I can remember well, long before homeschooling ever occurred in the, I'm talking about, well, let's see, Teresa and I got married in 1980. I'm going to say by the time I went to college, Dad, he actually started a little bank account for any grandchildren that came along. It was too late for his kids. All right. But he wanted a bank account for his grandchildren to be able to go to something besides a public school. He saw that issue early on.
Wow.
And so Teresa and I get married in 1980. And I'm wanting to farm. How do I farm on this? How do I make a little farm? How do I make a living on it? And so now I'm working off the farm. Teresa's working off the farm.
Mm-hmm.
We say, how can we drop our living expenses way down? And so, what's hilarious is the first car I had and drove it for 3 years. I bought for $50 from a neighbor and drove it. And instead of, trying to rent an apartment or build a house, we actually remodeled. I'm sure it was illegal as sin. We didn't get a permit, but we basically built an apartment in the attic of the farmhouse. We had this big attic up there that was, mud daubers and tar paper.
Right.
and we put a drop ceiling in for, nice lights, a kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
all this, and made an apartment up in so Trace and I were able to live cheap car, cheap living. We had firewood for heat. She can fix anything, sew anything, make anything. So if we didn't grow it, we didn't eat it. We never went on vacation. I always said if we could have figured out how to grow toilet paper, we could have pulled the plug on society. And
That's great.
and so we were living cheaply, and we were able to save half of our paychecks. And
wow.
Daniel came along our son came along very early, and so she stayed home with him. And I'm still working at the paper, and we're stewing. So now we got this little infant. So he's 6 months old. 6 months old. I mean, I'm sorry, not 6 months. 6 weeks old. 6 weeks
Okay.
old, and we're going out for our first. We're taking him off, away from home for the first time.
Mhm.
We get in the car. We're going to a little farming conference thing, and so we get in the car. We get him in his car seat, and I flip on the radio. We got in the car. I said, Dobson is on, James Dobson, Focus
Right.
on the Family. So I flip on the radio, and what I heard, you flip on the radio mid-sentence,
Mhm.
and the word homeschooling.
Okay.
And I looked at Teresa, and I mean, like yesterday, I can remember, I said, I pointed at the radio. I said, I have no idea what that is, but that's what we're going to do.
Okay.
And it was the first time Dobson had Raymond and Dorothy Moore on.
That's so incredible. The
Better
number
late
of
than
people that have heard that broadcast and have talked about that is so amazing to me. It was life-changing.
Yes. Well, I came home. We were living cheap. We didn't have a TV. We were living cheap, frugally.
Mm-hmm.
But I sprung for the whole Moore library. We got all the books, and I devoured them. I read them. I'd never heard of homeschooling.
Right.
And so we committed ourselves to that and never looked back. But again, growing up in that house that was not peer dependent, that didn't care a lick about what other people thought, freed us. I realized how freeing that is.
It is.
To have the freedom to not be, and in today's social media and TikTok culture, I mean, this is just a suffocating, this peer dependency. I thought it was bad when I was in school. Today, I think it's way worse.
Oh, I agree.
It's just a suffocating thing. And so I'm just thankful every day for being liberated from having to, put my finger in the air and say, well, where's the wind blowing? That's where we're going to go. It's just been a joy.
And so you and your wife got married in the early 80s. When was it that you were able to switch from actually working outside of the farm, off of the farm, to moving into the position that you're in now? When did that start to happen?
Yeah. So, again, we're living here on the farm. The farm's paid for, and I'm working in town. Teresa's at home with our little boy. But because we lived so cheaply, we were able to save like half of our paycheck. And we were literally, Suzanne, this is 1981, 82.
Right.
Okay. We were living on $300 a month.
Wow.
Okay. And of cash expenses.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because we had our own heat, firewood, we had a wood stove in the house that I kept going. We weren't into fashion, so we didn't have to have expensive pocketbooks, shoes, and clothes.
Right.
And Teresa's more frugal than I am, so that was easy. And so the point is that in 2 years, we were able to save enough money that we could live on the farm for 1 year.
Okay.
We saved $10,000, and I said we've got enough that I can step away, and we should be able to go fine without any income at all for a year. And so September 24, 1982, I left the newspaper and came home full time. I fully expected to go back to work. I didn't think it would last, but my thinking was that my total time away, by being home full time for a year, we can get so much progress that maybe we can cut our time away from, 15 years to 12 or 12 to 8 or,
Right.
something like that. And it's turned out I never went back off the farm. Now, it was tight.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I always tell people it was 3 years until we could exhale, you know, we
Right.
were going to make it. But I wouldn't trade those years for anything. We're no happier today than we were then. It was just us on the farm. Teresa and I mean, she was my tractor driver. We did
Mm-hmm.
everything. We were together all the time. We
Right.
gardened together. We just, again, we didn't have TV. We would read a lot. It was a wonderful, wonderful, foundation
Yeah.
of
Well, building your
of
home and your
security and
family
strength.
and
Yeah,
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 and your farm. I mean, those precious days, those are
yeah,
precious days.
yeah. They sure are. They sure are.
And
Yeah,
so it took you 3 years to be able to breathe a little bit.
yeah.
What were you able to, what was it that pushed you over those 3 years that you were able to really just depend on your farm? Did you go into multiple areas of business on the farm at that point, or were you mainly still focusing on poultry?
So yeah, during that period, of course, we were living very cheaply, so I was constantly scrounging for, a dollar,
Mm-hmm.
and not just to save, but to earn a couple.
Right.
And so we had the beef cows.
Okay.
I quickly began selling direct marketing the beef. In other words, we didn't sell it to the
Okay.
stockyard. We cultivated customers here locally, but
Mm-hmm.
we didn't have very many, so it didn't take a whole lot of customers. But
Right.
we started cultivating the beef. The second year, remember, Dad was an accountant, so he had this Mennonite couple that were clients, and they had a small engine repair shop, but they grew about 400 broiler chickens, meat chickens, on the side, and sold them live to people who would take them and butcher them, just so they could get their 100 for free
Okay.
every year. And they were getting elderly, and they were looking for somebody who would. They had about a dozen or 15 customers that would take these, other 300 chickens, and they were looking for somebody who would take those and service their customers, not to leave them hanging. And nobody in their community, in their Mennonite community, was interested.
Okay.
And I got wind of it, and Dad and I talked it over. And I'd had chickens when I was, I'd grown up with chickens, my own,
Right.
and we hadn't had chickens. I sold everything when I went to college, shut everything down,
Okay.
and we hadn't had chickens then. And so we said, well, sure. In fact, we won't even sell them live. I'll go ahead and butcher them for people. They don't have to get them butchered. I'll do that. And so we basically just, that couple's business, they just rolled it over
Mm-hmm.
with their customers and their chickens and everything. And so that second year home, we added the meat chickens.
Okay.
And I'd had these portable shelters that I'd had when I had chickens back as a teenager. We'd pulled them when I went to college. We pulled them up in the rafters of the barn.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we did this, I just pulled them down from the rafters and put meat chickens in them, boom,
Right.
and we're up
Right.
and running. And so we did that the first year. So that added chickens, and that went quite well. I was cutting a lot of firewood. People at that time were, we were still suffering from the Arab oil embargo,
Right.
and everybody went to wood. Well, not everybody, but a lot
A
of
lot of
people went
people.
to wood there in the late 70s, early 80s. So it was a very robust firewood market. And I loved the chainsaw, and I enjoyed it. I was good at it. So I would cut wood, but I didn't deliver it. I would put it on a great big pile here and let people come and get it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a niche market between the people. So there were three ways you could get firewood. You could get firewood either, cut, split, and delivered,
Right.
or you could get firewood from like a logger who would come with a big log truck, and you would have to he would roll them off, and then you'd have to cut it all up.
Mm-hmm.
So the niche in between, but there were a lot of people who enjoyed splitting the wood and stacking it, even hauling it, but didn't want to run a chainsaw.
Mm-hmm.
So I hit the niche of people that wanted it pre-cut, but were happy to put their own sweat equity into it to split it and haul it. They already had a pickup truck or a friend with a pickup truck.
Right.
So I didn't have to go running around and delivering it. They could do that. They could put their sweat equity in it, and I could hit that price between the long logs you had to cut up and the cut, split, and delivered very high price of having it all done for you.
Right.
So it was fairly robust and provided some cash flow through the winter.
Mm-hmm.
And so so there we are. And I got to admit that I picked up a couple little side things. So I helped a guy build fence. I helped a guy plant trees. But if you're living on $300 a month and you pick up a $900 side job,
Mm-hmm.
for 2 or 3 weeks, that money goes a long way.
Right.
And so we did a couple little odd jobs like that for people in the area
Right.
to pick up some extra cash, and that pushed us on through. And so by the time we're in at about by 88, so now we're 5 or 6 years in.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're actually, the chickens are up to a couple thousand. The beef is up. We didn't add pigs until, I don't know, maybe 94, 95. It was a good while before we added the pigs.
Right.
But we had the beef, we had the chicken, we added some eggs, and then we did the firewood.
Yeah.
And so, that was kind of the income deal. What made it work was we lived so cheaply.
Yeah.
If we had wanted a vacation and had been paying a mortgage on a big house
Mm-hmm.
and, done all and been, Teresa and I were married. We got married in 1980. And I remember well in 2020. So we'd been married 20 years, and we added up, and in the 20 years, we had not spent a cumulative total of $10,000 on automobiles.
Wow. That's crazy.
You think about it, it's absolutely crazy. But we had help. I mean, we had that first car, bought it from a neighbor for $50.
Mm-hmm.
Then we bought a car from a guy for, I don't know what, $500. And then we bought Teresa's grandmother's car when she went into a nursing home. We got that for $500. Right. And then we had a customer who said, I'm either going to give my car to the Salvation Army, or for you, we're going to upgrade. And it was a Lincoln Town car. We bought that he sold us that for $1.
There you go.
And we drove
That's
that
great.
for 3 years. So, we had some wonderful, help along the way. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that the relationships and the customer base actually provided us a tremendous amount of support, through those days. We had some really, really loyal customers that were desperate to see us succeed.
Well, I was going to say, you became, I'm sure, an inspiration to the community that you lived in as well, to see what you were able to successfully accomplish, on your own homestead and farm, and the family was working together. That's an inspiration to people, because during the 80s and 90s, we're already seeing a lot of people in our culture shift from, families living near one another, close together. They're separating and spreading out all over the country. And you have a family that's living together and working together. And I know that you've managed to accomplish that still as you've moved on. Will you share a little bit about how you've managed to live on the farm with your family over the course of this season?
Yeah, so that's not always easy.
Mm-hmm.
My mom, as we record this right now today, my mom will be 101 in December, and so she's taking a lot of care now. So Dad died early. Dad died in 88, but another thing that was cool about, and he was only 66, which seems really, really young to me now.
Yeah.
And Teresa lost her mother at 53, ovarian cancer. So of course that's awfully young too.
Mm.
And so I lost my dad at 31, which is, when I was 31, which
That's
is
young.
That's a young loss. But to his credit, Dad loved delegation. He loved to put you out on the stage. I'll be in the background. I'll open and close the curtains. You go out and perform.
Yeah.
And so he loved to do that. So the beautiful thing was that when he passed away, and Teresa and I had been on the farm for 5.5 years, there was not a bobble in the. I mean, we had all the decision making, the responsibility, everything had already passed on that baton.
Yeah.
So that was a very important lesson for me in the power of there was no hiccup on the farm in the business. And so here we are, our own kids started up. Our daughter didn't want to farm, which was fine.
Right.
And so she went to do other things. She lives about 15 minutes away. She and I have written a children's book together. She's she does our post. She's our little artist. She's very graphics artist. And so she works nearby. But Daniel, we only had 2 kids. And so Daniel, I'm taking him everywhere with me as a little kid. Remember, we decided to homeschool, but remember that was early 80s, and homeschooling was not popular at that time. In fact, that was back when the mainline education establishment was saying, we can't let this continue, or we won't be able to build enough psychiatric units for all the unsocialized kids, that don't know how to get along with society. Yeah. And our own family. Mom was a school teacher. My father-in-law was a school teacher. Teresa's grandmother was a Laura Ingalls Wilder certificated 16-year-old one-room school teacher.
That's great.
And so when we decided to homeschool, we got a lot of family pushback.
Right.
This aberrant, not really from my mom and dad, because they loved different. Okay, so. From Teresa's family, we got a lot of pushback. Your kids are going to be stupid. They're not going to know anything, blah, blah, blah. And so, we did some, I got to tell you this story just because I want to encourage homeschoolers that are feeling the pressure of, oh no, my little Johnny or my little Mary. Usually it's little Johnny, because, 80% of LD children in the public school are boys because they have a different learning. Their brain develops at a different time than girls. That's Dorothy Moore, Raymond and Dorothy Moore, they write about this in, Better Late Than Ever, the cognitive development, how it cycles, you can't grow your body and your brain at the same time. It takes too much energy. So your body picks a year or two to focus on your brain, and then it picks a year or two to focus on your body,
That's right.
And so anyway, feeling this family pressure, I got McGuffey readers, and Daniel and I'd be out, and I'd push, and he just, he's 5-6 years old. What does C say? What does A say? Ah. What does T say? T. All right, put them together. K, ah, t, and he couldn't get it.
Yeah.
And I was an early reader. I love books, and I was frustrated. What's wrong with my kid? He doesn't get this. And so it was so frustrating. And so finally, Teresa and I, you know what? It's okay. We're just going to back off, let it be.
Right.
And grandma, you just have to be quiet. It's whatever. It didn't matter that when he was 8 years old, Teresa and I got a conservation award. We had to go to Washington, D.C. for 2 days to receive this award. And so Daniel's 8, Rachel's 3. So we left them with mom here on the farm, and had 100 head of cattle. And at 8 years old, Daniel's moving across fences, moving the herd of 100 head of cattle, taking care of everything, while I'm gone. That doesn't count, though.
Right.
See, that's not intelligence that's measured.
Unfortunately.
And so, So anyway, 8, 9, 8, 9, he's still not reading, but he can remember everything. I mean, he can memorize, So at 10 years old, he wants to join the 4-H club. Okay. So we go to the 4-H club, and he gets elected like historian or some officer. I can remember it like yesterday. We're driving home. He's 10 years old, not reading. And by that time, our daughter, who's 10, Rachel would have been 5, she's already starting to read, little girl, she's sharp, and she's starting to read. She loves stories and stuff. And we're coming home, and from the back seat, the dark of the back seat, comes this, Daniel says, well, I guess if I'm going to be an officer, I better learn how to read. and in Suzanne, in less than a month, he went from 0 to basically 12th grade reading on his own by himself, just like that,
That's so
just like
funny.
that.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that because I have a son who's an avid reader and just far surpassed anybody that I know in reading pretty much everything. But
Hmm.
he was the same way. It was 10. And
Wow.
I was very frustrated, but when he hit 10 years old, he had a purpose for reading and he found it
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
couldn't stop him then. It was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Isn't that wonderful?
it's crazy.
And so I think that's an encouragement to, the main thing that we can do as parents, I think, is just to provide a habitat of curiosity and
Hmm.
inquisitiveness
Absolutely.
and opportunity. And if we provide a habitat, I call it a germination tray,
Yeah.
uh, the soil is curiosity and opportunity. They'll figure it out. They'll find it when they need to find it. So
Yeah.
anyway, so both of our kids, we're big believers in childhood entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
And so Daniel got he got his first rabbits at 8. He wanted to raise rabbits. Okay. So he got his rabbits at 8. Rachel, our daughter, started her baking business when she was about 5 or 6,
Okay.
baking zucchini bread, pound cake, poppy seed bread, things like that.
Hmm.
Remember, we had a customer base. We already had a customer base because we were direct marketing from the
Right.
farm. So of course, a lot of our customers, I mean, our kids grew up with our customers,
Right.
and our customers' kids.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the opportunity to be an entrepreneur, to add something. So our daughter's very artistic. So she started making these little pot holder loom on the
Hmm.
little loom, the little
Yep.
elastic things. And of course, people would buy that. And Daniel did his rabbits, and people bought those. And Rachel would make her zucchini bread, poppy seed bread. People would buy that. And so the kids grew up, entrepreneurially, running their own businesses. And so one of my proudest things is that both of our kids, when they hit 20 years old, had $20,000 in the bank
Wow. That
from
is
from their
incredible.
own earnings. They never got an allowance.
Yeah.
They earned it. And so they learned the value of money. They learned how, they learned how to make it, how to spend it, how to save it,
That's
and and
great.
and how to tithe it, how to give it.
Yeah.
And so those were all really important lessons for them. So here we are. The kids are getting Rachel. She wants to go do other things. Daniel loved the farm, wanted to be here, and so gradually he's getting older and older, and in
Hmm.
the teen years, and we started the apprenticeship program, and it was funny. We'd have 21, 22-year-old apprentices. And when I'm gone, Daniel's, 15, 16, he's in charge, and so, we had 22-year-olds. Yeah, that's what I always wanted to do. Come and take orders from a 16-year-old. But
It's
they
a good
did,
lesson.
they
Yeah.
did. Yeah, they did. And Daniel he knew everything. And so it was a natural progression, by the time he was in his early 20s, to basically, we turned over all day-to-day operations to
Hmm.
him. And so, my wife Teresa does she does the money, she writes the checks, and takes care of that. I'm now chief visionary.
Hmm.
And that's my official. I mean, it's a written role,
It's
chief
oh yeah.
visionary and negotiator, and chainsaw guy. I mean, I've got a few other things under that. Daniel is vice president of operations, day-to-day operations.
Hmm.
So he has completely taken charge of all of that element. And we have a team. We have a bunch of young people that are with us. We have a team that is just, Eric and Leanna have been with us now 13 years. He's apprentice manager. They met here. They got married here. And Leanna's in charge of inventory. So we have young people that are, our son is related, but we have all these that were basically, almost adopted kids,
Right.
in the farm business that are now here, that are as we say, they're part of the the inner sanctum.
Inner sanctum. Yep.
They're basically know nothing that we do without their approval or knowledge, and they have full rights to bring ideas and things to us. And so here we
Well,
are.
your story would be amazing and inspiring if it only had impacted your family, right? And if it only had gone down through the generations of your family. But I think one of the things that I have loved about you is that for you, you've embraced helping others do the same thing and trying to bring others along. And not only that, I know that you've spent time, investing your time in legislation and making sure that other people could do what you do, making sure you can continue to do what you do. So, I mean, can you just share with us like a little? I know you speak and you write prolifically, but what made you think, and at what point did you think I need to take this outside of my farm and my home and help other people to embrace this?
Yeah. Well, I guess, I mean, I guess the short answer there is that I have a heart of a teacher,
Mm-hmm.
and I I love what I do, and there are few things that are as whatever affirming and enjoyable as having other people want to learn to do what you have mastery of.
Right.
What piano teacher doesn't love a kid that wants to learn how to play the piano, right? I mean,
Exactly.
it's man, I mean, you got to be a really selfish, greedy, self-centered person to not want to share what, answers that you have or mastery that you have with other people.
Yeah.
And so that's where we are. And so as we began to realize that because we were direct marketing, we had to promote the brand. We had to promote Polyface. So early on, I put together a slide program. Remember slide carousels, on the
Absolutely.
Kodak carousel, and I put those together. And I would go down to the, for dinner clubs, Kiwanis Club, Rotary, Ruritan, AARP, the Toastmasters. I mean, there's all these groups that meet. Back in those days, they don't anymore. Now it all happens on social media. But
Right.
back then, there were these groups that would meet. They'd have dinner meetings. They're always looking for an interesting program. And so I put together a program on how we could save the world with pastured livestock,
Mm-hmm.
and it was part of our marketing thing. If you want to be involved with this, then I'm glad to take your name. We'll put you on the list, and
Right.
you can get something. All right, you get our newsletter. So we did that very, very early on. So the point is that when you are a direct market farm, inherently you've got to promote. You've got to,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
you got to get out there and promote your brand. And so we were already doing that. Well, then when we were actually successful as this, family on this little farm, and we don't have Swiss bank accounts, and we're
Mm-hmm.
making it and enjoying it, then next thing you know, here comes media, and we were in all sorts of print, Bon Appetit, all sorts of magazines, Smithsonian, different things
Right.
throughout the early 90s. And we started attracting attention. Teresa and I never, when we came back to the farm full time, the idea that we would be whatever gurus of a movement never
Mm-hmm.
even crossed our mind.
Yeah.
Our sole objective was we just want to farm full time. We want to
Mm-hmm.
figure out how to farm full time. And
That
that
was,
was a big enough objective,
yeah,
to start from
exactly.
scratch from there. And so we did that. But then what happened was that became such a compelling story, as you have mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
It became such a compelling story that then here comes the media, and they're
Right.
starting to want us to do things. And fortunately, I had a gift of communication. So I'll tell you another very, very personal story. I might not be able to get through it,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm gonna tell it to you because it's another one of those just profound things that I think parents need to know for their kids. So my older brother was very athletic.
Mm-hmm.
He played football, he gymnastics. I mean, he was just. I was what's called a slow bloomer. I was husky, a little bit pudgy, and didn't actually become the muscle man that I am, until I was late teen. All right. So I couldn't run. Okay. So, and my mom was a health and phys ed teacher,
Okay.
in the high school. So she was in the locker room and girls sports and all that. I mean, before Title IX, then Title IX came in
Right.
right as she was actually kind of getting out. Anyway, so here I am. I'm coming up. I'm 3 years younger than my older brother, and of course every kid, and mom's this athlete, and so I got to go out for the seventh grade baseball team. All
Mm-hmm.
right, so I go out for the seventh grade baseball team, and just to illustrate. So when I was in like sixth grade, I came within a hair's breadth of going to the National Spelling Bee.
Okay.
And I had already won like poetry reading contests, prose reading contests. I had a dramatic flair. Okay. I mean, one of the stories Dad always liked to tell was in third grade, he and Mom go to a PTA meeting, meet my third grade teacher. When the teacher finds out who he is, she looks at him and she says, Mr. Salatin, you have no secrets. So obviously I was a storyteller from day one. All right. And so I had this gift. All right. Of communication, verbal, story writing. I would write stories we never had a TV. So I'd come home, I'd do my chores, and I'd come in with a spiral notebook and a pencil and just write fiction stories just for fun.
A testament to having no screens, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Self-entertainment. Yeah. So anyway, here I am, seventh grade, go for the baseball team, got to prove something. And I didn't make it, got cut. Eighth grade comes along. Oh, I'll go out for the basketball team. Go out for the basketball team and didn't make it. I remember like yesterday sitting there looking at that sheet of paper. My name is not on it, and making a conscious decision. By that time, realized I had some wins, prose, poetry, I was doing some, and I made a conscious decision at that point. I will never go out for another sports team. I'm good at communication. I'm going to put all my effort at communication. So I joined the debate team in eighth grade and did drama, theater, public speaking, forensics, all throughout, and got trophies, won essay contest. I never entered an essay contest that I didn't win. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying.
That was your bent.
The best thing that ever happened to me was getting cut, because I tell parents, too many parents want to live they want to compensate their failure through their kids. And so they push their kids to a place that creates tension.
Right.
And makes their kids wonder, am I good enough? Am I, where's my self-worth? Yeah. And so I'm saying, man, I am so thankful for that failure, because it helped me to understand where my gifts were.
Right.
And a lot of times our failures, our alleged failures, are actually nudges from God, if you will. Here's where your twig is bent.
Yeah.
Here's where you want to grow.
Yeah.
And so that was just a profound, important lesson. So here I am, I'm in high school. I'm a rising senior. I go in for my junior year curriculum evaluation with the guidance counselor. And she looks at my record. I'm an honor student. I'm like number 3 in the class, doing really well, and all this extracurricular stuff, honor student, all this. And she says, well, what do you really want to do? Because I had typing instead of physics. I wanted to take typing instead of physics. And she said, well, what do you really want to do? I said, well, I want to be a farmer. And she about had a heart attack. I thought I was going to do CPR on her. And she went into berating, what? You're going to waste all that talent, waste all those brains. She just went nuts over that I was going to be a farmer. And basically the same thing happened in college as well. And who would have thought that? And so in college, I was in debate and all these forensics things, public speaking, all those contests. And who would have thought that as a farmer, I would be able to fully leverage all those communication talents, that I honed throughout school and competitions, and be able to use this. I probably, there's 2 of us on our college debate team. 2 of us are now motivational speakers, and I probably speak to as many people as they do, as full-time speakers. So here we are. I forget what the question was, but so I'm a storyteller, Suzanne. And I love communication. So I'll tell you, when parents come up to me, because I have a lot of them now, little kids, they read our story, and homesteading is a big deal, and kids are, I want to grow a garden. I want to, and I've got 8, 9, 10-year-old kids coming up to me with, mom in tow. And mom says, my son says he wants to be a farmer, or my daughter wants to be a farmer. What kind of curriculum path do I tell them to? And I say, man, get involved with your local theater. Learn to write, learn to speak, because communicators run their vocations.
Yep.
Whatever you are, communicators are the ones that run those, run those vocations. And so
That's so
I'm so
true.
thankful. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm so thankful that I cultivated that. Yeah, I had a gift, but I cultivated it. And man, when I started getting asked to speak at conferences and stuff, Teresa would tell you, I'd go up in front of a mirror and I'd practice speaking
Hmm.
in front of a mirror to myself, to cadence and jokes and all this
Yeah.
stuff. I've honed it and I've skilled it, and I still have plenty more to learn. But it just didn't pop in, naturally. I've worked at it,
But I think
and
it's
so
like it's really an important point though for people who are listening to catch this. You said it was important that you had that failure. It was important for you to understand where your gifts and talents were. And I know one of the things that I've always tried to say to my own children and encourage them with is whatever God's given you a passion for at this time or a gifting for at this time, and it may not all look the same across your life. You may be interested in politics here and music here and writing here. And
yep.
and while you're growing and learning, you're honing all of that at different points. And I
Hmm.
can't wait to see how that's all going to come out and
Right.
play in
Right.
that place where God's created for you to be and for you to make a difference.
Yeah.
And your story is a perfect example of
Yeah.
that. It may not
Hmm.
have made a lot of sense, but it worked out, right?
Yeah.
Got you
Yeah.
where you
Well,
need
I
to be.
mean, it's depressing at the time,
Hmm.
or you feel like, well, nobody wants me. I'm no good, whatever.
Yeah.
But if you will take that as a stoplight to move you to the green light,
Hmm.
it's a good thing. So as we developed, as the farm developed, it was just natural that I would want to share it. I mean, I
Yeah.
wanted to share it. I wanted to share it on a broader scale. And so what happened then? People started calling. Well, how you do this chicken thing? That was the first thing. How do you do this chicken thing? And it got to where I'd come in from working all day, and I have 6 or 7 phone calls to return. How do you do this chicken thing? So I told Teresa, this was in 1990. I told her, I said, man, I cannot come in every night and have 2 hours on the phone or from people around the country. How do you do this chicken thing?
Right.
So we did a manual, a little pastured poultry manual. We did. It was just a little Xerox, a
Hmm.
little Brad, and sold that thing through Stockman Grass Farmer magazine, which I'd begun writing a monthly column for,
Right.
and did that in 91. And we sold 2,000 of those in 2 years. And I looked at her. I said, "Man, there's money in this here information thing." And
That's
and
right.
so by that time, my greatest mentor besides Dad was Alan Nation, founder of Stockman Grass Farmer.
Hmm.
He really took me under his wing. He said, "You've got something special here." He said, "You need to actually do a book, not this manual thing. You need to do a book.
Hmm.
Become an author." And so he shepherded me through that, and we came out with Pastured Poultry Profits in 1993. Started primarily as a way for me not to be stuck on the phone every night explaining to
Right.
people how to raise chickens.
That's great though.
And that's kind of how that first book came about. And then people said, well, your beef is cool too. How do you do this beef thing? So in 95, we did the beef thing. And then people said, well, how do you do the whole farm thing? So then I did You Can Farm in 97. And so
Yeah.
all of my writing has been in response to what I feel like people are wanting. What do they need? What do they need to hear? They
Hmm.
haven't been written to make money. Some of I've written 16 books. Some have made really, really good money. Others, not that much.
Right.
But I write I write for what I think. What do people need to hear? What are the questions I'm getting asked? What's the hot button? What do
Hmm.
people need to hear? How can I scratch their itch, if you will?
Yeah.
And some of them do better than others, but that's how they go.
And you've taken your skills and talents as a communicator and your understanding of your craft to the legislature as well and worked to protect farming and farmers.
Yes.
How long have you been doing that?
Oh, goodness. I've been involved with that for over 20 years, I'm sure. We started the Virginia Independent Consumers and Farmers Association at least 20 years ago, maybe more than that. Time gets away when it gets to be so far. But yeah, I mean, and people that want to know that end of my story, I wrote a book, Everything I Want to Do is Illegal, about our battles and our tangles with authorities, with what I call the food police, which are identical, Suzanne, identical to the early battles that homeschoolers had with the education police. And so, and the two right now, I believe that the food sovereignty or food freedom is in the same position right now that homeschool freedom or lack thereof was about 35 to 40 years ago.
Right.
And so, there's always got to be some bogeyman, for the tyrants to say, oh, we can't allow this, we can't allow this choice. And so, right now we have, so my new little sound bite is we have choice in the bedroom, choice in the bathroom, choice in the womb, but no choice in the kitchen.
Yeah. There you go.
And so I see food in that same area, which is why I'm trying to now Uberize the food system. We need a segment of the food system to where you and I, as producer and consumer, can transact food business without a bureaucrat being involved at some point. And so, I'm a bit of a crusader for that, and am not ashamed of it.
Don't be afraid of that. Well, let me ask you this. I can't have this whole conversation with you and not ask for you to tell us a little bit about how you came to be known as the lunatic farmer.
Ah, okay. Yeah. So, the lunatic farmer. So you got to realize that just like in Venezuela, we are not endorsed or embraced by the greater ag community.
Right.
And so many of the farmers in our community, in our area, I mean, literally, there's no open warfare with our neighbors, but they do believe that our unvaccinated cows, our unmedicated chickens are going to get sick and destroy their cows or their chickens or whatever in their confinement chicken. They actually feel like they're going to lose their farm because we're so negligent.
Right.
So there's not a lot of love or embrace in the greater ag community toward me. So they openly have called me Typhoid Mary. They've called me a bioterrorist because I'm going to get everybody's animals sick. A starvation advocate because we all know that compost can never compete with chemicals. So you got these things. So this happened one time. I had a phone call and I got, this on the phone to my face one time too many. And I got off and I said, you know what? I can either be really frustrated about this and depressed about it and whatever, get in a bad mood or you know what?
Embrace it.
Let's just embrace it. Yeah, I'm the lunatic. Of course I'm the lunatic. And I did that, and man, did I had no clue how that would just become a handle. People just love it. They just love it. And so now I am the global lunatic farmer, and I have a lot of fun with it, and it creates a lot of time for jokes and stories and satire, and just and it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is, and I think that if anybody has had a chance to talk to you for a moment or read one of your books, it's obvious that you've had fun doing what you do. And I think that, the lack of, I know that there's been stress and there's been challenges and it wasn't always easy for you, but I think it goes back to, if we look at where your story began, that freedom to think differently and that not be suppressed, right? Has really given you the freedom to be who you are today. And so I think it's important for us as we're raising our kids, the lessons that we can learn and the way that we can be inspired, by those things that we see. And sometimes it's you can be afraid to try to step outside of the norm. It's not always an easy thing to be the different family or the different person in the room. But man, the stories that you end up hearing from people that that are willing to do that.
That's where the innovative edge is. And I mean, there's a book out, Innovations on the Lunatic Fringe or whatever. I mean, that's that's where innovation happens.
Yeah.
But it's not always. I remember one time we were traveling somewhere, and from the back seat, Rachel pipes up. She says, "Mom, do we have to be weird in everything?" And so there's a period of time when when there's some pushback. What I say, eyes roll. But as you get older, you begin to really develop, I think, a great appreciation for what that unorthodoxy enables you to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you, this is one last question before we wrap this up. If there is a quote, something that somebody said to you that maybe stuck with you, or something that, in words inspired you through the years, from your family, from the Bible, from, history, is there anything that just stuck with you that would be the thing that would run through your head and remind you, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing?
Well, I mean, why I'm doing what I'm doing is I view creation as it's all God's stuff, and I'm just a steward. But the phrase that I like to use is one of my favorite ones, just to encourage folks, is good enough is perfect. Good enough is perfect. We get so stuck on everything's got to be just right, just perfect. And we miss being able to free ourselves to do a lot of things. Well, it's not right. We have this saying, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right. Well, no. If it's worth doing poorly first. That's actually the truth, because you don't speak well, you don't walk well, you don't write well, you don't do anything well first. You got to start. If it's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly first. And so a corollary to that is good enough is perfect. And the important thing is do it.
Yeah.
Do something, get it done. Make movement. Okay. Make movement. You can adjust course, you can refine, you can put on paint, you can do that later, but just good enough is perfect. Start somewhere doing something, and mastery and perfection will come down the road.
I absolutely love that. And I thank you. I thank you so much for just taking time to talk to me today. I could do this for a long time with you.
Oh, you're very kind. It's been my pleasure.
No, I thank you. And I really believe that those people who, like you, have just leaned into what you're very good at and strong at and shared it with other people. Those are some of the most impactful and powerful people that we'll know, and I thank you for doing that and being that. So
thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the Not by the Book podcast from the Florida Parent Educators Association. To learn more about homeschooling in Florida, or to find resources to help you on this amazing journey, visit our website at FPEA.com. If you have any suggestions for future guests, contact me, Suzanne, at notbythebook@fpea.com. Thanks again for listening, and be inspired to live your life not by the book.